Welcome to the Jboy Show, hosted by Jake Crain, the fastest growing sports show in the nation.
I'm Coach Hugh Freeze.
This is Super Bowl champion Brandon Graham.
Hey, this is DJ Shockley, and you're watching.
And thanks for watching the Jboy Show.
What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining us on another edition of the Jboy Show. As usual, got to give a shout out to betonline.ag. Head over there today. The online casino is always open. Whether you bet whatever, horse racing, NASCAR racing, Major League Baseball, they're going to play the sharps, put the spreads out early, and let you play against them. So whether it's parlays, props, individuals, teasers, pleasers, they got you handled at betonline.ag, and tell them that Jboy sent you. But a guy we've had on a bunch, get a ton of great response when we bring him on, was an outstanding DB at Auburn, a guy that could play nickel, a guy that played corner, a guy that could play safety, whatever they asked him to do, he could do it. Had a great NFL career. Mr. Jerraud Powers. Jerraud, man, what's up? Thanks for coming on again.
No problem, man. Thank you for having me.
Anytime, brother, anytime. Well, I want to start, Jarrod, because, we always talk about personnel and these guys are returning and this guy's returning. But in today's game, when you're looking at these offenses, I mean, not only in college, but in the NFL, the way they're able to take advantage of space, you see a lot more empty. You've got the RPO game. You get so many different flavors. And you see so many defensive coordinators, coaches, head coaches wanting to go to that 4-2-5 format. We all know how important the nickel is in that. But just as much ball as you've seen, as many meeting rooms as you've been in, I mean, coverages from back to front and really what to expect. But what would you, if you're a defensive coordinator, what would your base defense be? Would it be a 4-2-5?
In today's age, that probably will be your base, even though you might not say that on paper. It's just because most times out of 10, a lot of teams are just starting in 11 personnel or where there's enough threats on the field that you just need that extra DB in there. But if you took that out and I was just trying to start my base foundation, game plan, week one install type defense, I think I would still try to stick to like a 3-4 where I want outside guys able to stand up to give you that 3-4 look, but also be flexible enough that they can put their hand in the dirt as well and give me a 4-3 look if I choose to do that. So I'm more of a hybrid guy. Just give you just so you can have more guys that learn multiple positions. That just makes calling defenses a lot more fun if you got guys that kind of understands and can play multiple positions. Mm-hmm. Because like we talk about from that 3-4 standpoint, you tell an outside, you tell a DN pretty much to stand up and now he's considered a linebacker. But then when you tell him to put his hand in the dirt, now he's considered a DN, which can dictate what offenses can do and what offenses can't do.
Yeah, and I always love people like, yeah, man, we're a 3 down or we're a 4 down. Well, regardless of what you are, most of the time, you're going to get to 4 down. You're not just rushing 3 every time out of the 3 down. To me, it's obviously more about being able to say, hey, now we're able to put a 0 out there. Now we're able to put a 0, 2, 4 eyes, do some things to where you're screwing up the track and really the normal fluidity of what that offensive line is seeing, especially with as much zone scheme as you get nowadays with combos and stuff like that. You're able to mix it up because, Jarrod, when I'm looking out there and I see teams that can go from empty to 13 personnel that can give you the RPO but can still run power, you almost have to package things defensively. That's why we always talk about depth. And I think that's what Derek Mason, just to use an example, is going to do at Auburn. You'll see some 3 down, you'll see some 4 down. But how important is it? We always talk about offenses being balanced and multiple, but how important is it to be a little bit multiple on defense nowadays, just because the game's changed so much?
Well, I think when the RPO stuff first hit the scene, I think one of the things that it forced defenses to do is you had to be limited in your coverages because it took a few years for defensive coordinators to kind of catch on to the RPO system. It don't matter what system you're on. After so long, coaches are so damn good that they're gonna figure it out, whether it's an offensive coach or a defensive coach. When, like I said, when the RPO first hit, it was forcing defenses to become more basic just because you couldn't have so much on your plate because things were happening so fast. You just wanted guys to line up and be able to play. But I think defensive coordinators have adjusted over the years to where that they the way that they install now and the way that they teach things now, teaching multiple coverages and to see certain looks, you can check and get into the right defense you need to get to. And that's just a matter of having smart football players and just developing as the years go on, because like I said, I think the RPO style game is starting to slow down a little bit, just because I think defenses and defensive coordinators are starting to catch on. That I think that at some point, whether it's 5 years or a little bit more, at some point you're going to go back to your old pro style offense that you used to see, because it'll, in 5 or 10 more years, that'll be seen as some new invention, just because people have literally forgotten about, 2 running backs in the backfield, fullback, and all that type of stuff, to where you're going to run power every play until it stop you. I mean, you look at, Alabama when Nick first got there, it wasn't no RPO. You knew who was getting the ball. You knew it was going to be a power, and it was just a matter of who was going to enforce their will. And I think that's what the game is going to go back to eventually, because like anything else, everything is just a revolving circle, a revolving door, and history always repeats itself. So I think we'll go back to that soon. And on that same token, I mean, you look at defenses, your typical middle linebacker is not your typical middle linebacker 15, 20 years ago. Everybody's looking for speed. Everybody's looking for everybody that can go sideline to sideline and all those type of things. So even when it becomes, your outside backer and your DNs and all that type of stuff, you might find a bunch of defensive coordinators that might pick speed over just that big, gigantic guy that can maybe cause havoc and cause some disruption. But if you can't chase down or tackle in space in the college football game, I mean, it's going to be hard to get on the field.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. And you look at how intricate the screen games are now, obviously not just to the running back, but to the wide receivers. There's 40,000 different ways you can get a screen out of multiple formations. But you're exactly right, Jarrod. Football's cyclical. In 30 years, everybody maybe run the triple option again. It really just goes like that. It's amazing. And it's funny. You know what? Sometimes new ideas aren't really new ideas. They're just called something different. And it's funny how you see that in football as well. But, Jarrod, when I look at it and I look at the landscape, to me, I almost compare, coaches and systems and philosophies. It's almost like a predator-prey relationship in nature. Like you're going to evolve as to what your predators, how they can catch you. If they're really fast, well, over time, you're going to have to get really fast to be able to run away from them. Or if they're really strong, you're going to have to get really strong to be able to combat them. And I think that's why we keep seeing this rat race, because defense is always going to be chasing offense schematically because it's reactionary. I can't sit here, and you know this as well as anybody, I can't sit here and say, all right, well, here they're coming out. It's 10 personnel coming out of the huddle. That doesn't mean I know it's going to be doubles or trips where I got to make a check, or hell, they may motion out to empty. You got to have different answers. And most teams typically stay with 2 or 3 empty checks and something like that. It's just very interesting, the chess match, and really how much defense is packaged now whenever they're able to sub the offense, why the referee has to stand over there and wait so the defense can answer that call. So I think you're exactly right. And it's really interesting. And when you look at, and I want to ask you about, Derek Mason specifically, because this is a guy that is a defensive guru. That's what he is. And he's been on the West Coast. He's done the 3-down stuff, went to the SEC, realized, hey, I may need to start sprinkling some 4-down stuff against these guys with the personnel that I have at Vanderbilt. And he's had success and he's had failures, even though he did some things with that Vanderbilt defense with the personnel that he had that was pretty impressive. But when I see Derek Mason, I think about Derek Mason schematically. I think about balance. I think about accountability, but he is a fundamentals guy. And really gets it, Jarrod, because there's a difference to me between being a secondary guy that understands a lot about the secondary, and maybe you're a newer guy or a front 7 guy. You have to understand how everything works. And I think that's the perspective that Derek Mason brings, that listen, the front has to mirror the back, the back has to mirror the front, and we better be damn good in the middle too.
No, that's a fact. And I think Derek Mason is going to do a great job. I thought it was a great hire. Whether you play 3-4, 4-3, 4-2-5, it really doesn't matter. It's so many different ways to skin a cat. But I think as coaches, what separates the good coaches and the bad coaches is the good coaches always adapt their system to the players that they have. They never try to make the players somebody and make the players fit into their system. I always believe that as a coach, you look at your roster and look at your talent level and see what guys does best. And if that means that you got to change your system up, just because if you change your ways, you will put your player in a better position to make plays where he's comfortable and doing things naturally that he loves to do. That's what separates you as a coach, because you can have a bunch of good football players in the same room, And if the system don't fit, or guys playing out of position, or guys are not showcasing their strengths in their game, you can struggle at defense, because some guys don't know how to play certain roles that they're not used to playing. You know, the reason why they're in these positions in these big, you know, Power 5 schools and, you know, in those meeting rooms and in those seats is because they do something special. And I think as a coach, it's up to the coaches to put those special talents in position to make the plays that you know they can make, and you know that's why they recruited you. So I think Derek Mason's going to do a good job, because I'm pretty sure he does realize that. And you know, you can't have success in the college football realm if you're not adjusting your system and getting the guys to come in and buy into your system and all those things. So I think Derek's going to definitely do a good job.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see, especially year one. You look at what Auburn's gotten from the portal, already expected to get a few more. But speaking of recruiting, I do got to tell you, one of our new sponsors, Dynasty U. It's a brand new recruiting app. It's like a LinkedIn for high school players. Everything, your profile, you can get put out in front of a bunch more eyes. If you're wanting to get recruited and put yourself in the best position possible, you need to go download the Dynasty U app off iOS or the Google Play Store. It's great stuff. It's very easy to navigate. It's new age. We all know there's parents out there that are trying to find a way to get more eyes on their kid, on their athlete, on their prospects. It's easy to navigate for you as well. You can always update your information, and the platform is fantastic. Again, you can download the Dynasty U app. It's on Google Play, the Google Play Store. It's on the iOS. It's absolutely great stuff. And I'm telling you, this is the new wave, as I mentioned, and you need to get out ahead of this thing. If you're a guy that, if you're in 9th grade, 10th grade, 8th grade, if you're a parent that wants to set your kid up for success, again, this doesn't guarantee a scholarship offer. Your kid's tape's got to earn that. His grade's got to earn that. But if you want to set him up, her up in a position to have success and have a chance to make some of those connections, you need to download this new app. It's fantastic. It's Dynasty U. Go download that today. It's like a LinkedIn for high school players wanting to be recruited. Coaches, it's a huge help for you as well. That's Dynasty U. Go download that. We're here with Jarrod Powers, former Auburn standout, NFL standout, a guy that knows the game. We're talking defense. And, you know, Jarrod, when you ever had a new coordinator or a new position coach come in, whether it was college or the NFL, I know obviously your mindset, while it may not change in some phases, it's a lot more of a business, obviously, in the NFL, and you may have a different thought. But what were a couple things that you were looking at as a player, as a playmaker, as a leader on the defense, that the first few days of that new hire, you wanted to check some things off the list? What were some of those things?
You know, once you get to a certain level, you're going to play in different style schemes, different systems, but you're still going to be expected to do a job. You're still going to have a certain responsibility and a way that they see that you fit into their system, that you're going to have to make adjustments yourself to see if you can do it. And like for instance, I remember at Auburn, my first year, it was Coach Gibbs, David Gibbs. And, you know, he never really yelled, but he had ways to get his point across by challenging guys. And he was a real players coach. So the whole room loved him just because, you know, he really wasn't going to do too much to make you feel like, oh, man, this guy's riding me, or this guy don't like me, or whatever the situation. He was a real big motivator, but he left and Muschamp came in. Muschamp was more so direct, straight shooter. If your football was bad, he was going to tell you it was bad. If your football was great, he was going to tell you it was great. And then when you walk off the field, he was going to act like nothing ever happened on the field. So he was just a straight shooter. At A-gap, you can't have an excuse on why you didn't get the A-gap, because he's seen it all. He's heard it all. His resume, it is what it is. If you're supposed to be in the A-gap and he go back to the film and you tell him something different, and he gives you another reason on why he's right, I mean, you just got to go with that. So I remember when he first got there, that's what made me say that, all right, I can't have mistakes in practice, because he was going to dress you again in a team meeting, and it was going to be some things that you probably not going to want to hear just coming from his mouth when you make a mistake. Yeah. One of the first things he ever told us during the spring ball was like, if you guys play good, I get to provide for my family. If you guys don't play good, I'm going to have to find me another job, because they're going to fire me. And I remember when he first said that, that kind of resonated with me, because I'm like, yeah, it does make
That's real.
I mean,
That's real.
Everything that we do, everybody is tied in together.
Yeah. And as long as that message is consistent and being echoed by the other coaches, obviously that's the job of the head coach. That's the job of the coordinators on that side of the ball. And something that's huge, because we always talk about culture for the players. The culture for the coaching staff has to be right. Because again, a head coach is typically coaching the coaches. You have to do that as well. That's something a lot of people don't think about. But, Jerraud, my last question for you is one that I had to do myself when I was defensive coordinator. And I think there's a balance between having enough stuff in there to protect yourself from pretty much anything you're going to see, a la empty, a la wildcat, jumbo, formation into the boundary, trips, quads check, all that stuff. And then not having too much to where it's paralysis by analysis. Can you just talk about having that fine line as we wind down here when you're installing it, especially when you're brand new? Because if the players don't play fast, and there's a whole heck of a lot of coaches that have great schemes, but if the players don't get it, it doesn't matter because the coach isn't making a play the whole year.
Right. I think one thing I think as a coach that's in power, whether you're a DC, OC, head coach, or whatever, I think the first thing you got to do when you're trying to get people to buy into your system or buy into whatever it is that you're teaching is whatever you got to do to to grab the players' attention as a whole, to be like, hey, this is what we got to do to win. I think that you definitely have to do that. I remember I used to think that Muschamp system was just so damn complex. I remember going through spring and training camp and just thinking like, man, it's so many checks. If this guy moved, we got to check this. If they line up in this, we got to check that. And then once the season got there and he only used certain stuff per every week, like I guess the whole entire playbook, once the season get there, I think a lot of fans that watch football probably don't understand this. You're not giving guys every week the entire playbook. 100%. You're picking out the best plays that you think that you need for that week. And I think as a coach, you got to have stuff in your toolbox to, all right, if I know this is our 3-by-1 check, but if they answer and they're doing A, B, and C, I'm going to have this in my toolbox as a changeup. I think all coaches should definitely have changeups because the game goes as planned probably 30 to 40% of the time. Yeah. That other 70%, you got to make adjustments to win the game. You're not going to play too many games to where you're just like, man, the game plan was excellent. The game plan was perfect. I've had games like that, of course, but more times out of not, you get done with a game and you're like, man, we didn't even call such and such. We didn't even call something. Man, we ran this all week of practice and we never called it. So as a coach, I think you always have to limit the amount of the load that you put on your players during that week. I think you need to know what that line is on what's too much and what's too little. But I think you always got to have stuff in your toolbox to where everybody in the defensive room know this play, and this play, and we need to go to that. We can go to it, even though you might not have repped it that week. You might not have went over it in a couple weeks, but that spring and summer, you went over it damn near every day. Yep. And if you called it, guys can adjust and make plays with it. So I think that's another key thing as a coach when it becomes you calling plays and being a coordinator and making sure that your team don't got too much on his plate as well. Yeah.
No, man, it's such a great point, and you're exactly right. It's so funny, you work all week as a coach and you're finding tendencies and seeing what they like to do in certain situations, and you rep and you walk through, and you're at the hotel on Friday walking through, we're going to get this. Then they come out for 4 quarters and you may get something different. You look back on the call sheet and you're like, man, we didn't even run this and the other. And then you say, well, on one hand, especially if you won, well, that could be good. We can save that for later, especially if it's something new because we didn't tip it on tape. But it just, you wonder, guys, like, man, I wish I didn't waste that time, even though it's tough to say it's wasted time when that's what they're showing you. That's what makes the game so interesting. And that's why you got coaches that are sick to their stomach before the game, because you never really know how it's going to go. And it's funny, you talk about defenses kind of narrowing down that playbook. Everybody that asked me, well, what do you think about the offense in the spring game? I was like, well, it's hard for me to sit here and say anything about it because you're taking a whole install from 13 to 14 practices and kind of putting that in the game, even though you don't get too deep. And that's not even going to be close to what you're going to do in a game plan. It's going to be a lot more pigeonholed than that. You're going to have your specials. You have some changeups, but I think that works on both sides of the ball. And it's really, really interesting. But Jarrod, man, this has been fantastic. It's always fantastic when I get you on here, brother. You know, we're going to have to do this again. Tell everybody where they can find you on social media to give you a follow. Cause you're always putting out great stuff, man. I mean, you interact on Twitter every now and then.
Appreciate it. Yeah, on Twitter, it's J Powers 25, and then on Instagram it's J Powers 26. So everybody follow me. I try to keep all my posts sports related. So I have fun arguing with fans and everything. But just to make another point before we head out,
yeah, definitely.
The good coaches that I've been around, man. So in the NFL, you break your games down by the 4. Like, all right, these are first 4 opponents, next 4 opponents. I mean, I've seen coaches that's literally like, hey, we're going to put this in the game plan this week, and we might run it 2 or 3 times because we play the Falcons in 10 more weeks, and they need to see this because I want them studying this because when we play the Falcons, we're not going to do it, and we're going to do something else.
The old Trojan horse.
You got some coaches that are genius like that. Oh, for sure. You got some coaches that's like, hey, like, let's just say Harsin and Auburn, Penn State opening up or whatnot. He might be thinking like, yeah, of course we're game planning and getting ready to beat Penn State. But I'm pretty sure that they've already been looking at week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, and like, hey, we need to put this on tape because we're getting ready to play such and such week 4. And I would rather them have to study us doing it this way because when we play them, we're not going to do it that way. You know, just little stuff. Cause you're like, if they practicing it all week, they're practicing it one way and we throw a change up. You know, some coaches are not, good at changing during the course of a game and adjusting and doing all that. So you kind of put that pressure on coaches to see if they can make those adjustments that they need to make in a live setting rather than preparing a full week, for certain type of plays.
Yeah, which is a whole hell of a lot. Calling it straight up and adjusting on the fly after halftime is a whole heck of a lot different than game planning all week. And because once you get off that script, then we're going to find out. Once you get off that script, then we're really going to find out. And you know exactly what I'm saying.
Those first 15
plays.
Get past those first 15 plays. Now the game starts.
Yeah, so we had an OC that used to say, man, it's like it's almost like playing on varsity on NCAA. And after the first 15 plays, it's like playing on Heisman, man. You really got to see it. But Jarrod, I appreciate it, brother. It's always fun.
I appreciate it, man.
I appreciate everybody joining us as well. Make sure you head over to jboyshow.com, grab some merch, subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to the podcast. Got some more great stuff coming. Make sure you tell your friends. We're going to blow this thing up as big as we possibly can as we steamroll toward the SEC football season. It's been another edition of the Jboy Show, and Jboy's going. Gone.
The Jboy Show is produced by David Cohn, Technical Director Dave Hammock, Creative Director David Culbertson, Audio Engineer Feyzan Shareef, Production Assistants Blaine Crain and Kyle Orr, Executive Producers Jake Crain, Vince Thompson, Steve Chamberlain, and David Cohn. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and visit our website, thejboyshow.com, for updates regarding our newest apparel and merch designs. Win the water cooler with the Jboy Show.